In this lesson, we'll see how to view our drawings as prints to test the lines and the text sizes. So this is quite important because just before you start going into too much detail and replicating your work too many times, as we had gone and replicated elements from our section to our elevation, you want to make sure that what you're drawing is looking correct in your prints. So it is a very big recommendation that you go and do a test print of the first drawing that you already do. So this is something that we could have done earlier on if we wanted to, but generally when printing is taught, they teach it right at the end. But I find that it's much easier to actually preview your prints as they would look because you do see them in a whole different way. So let's go right now and have a look at how we can get a print preview for ourselves on the screen. So the first thing to know is that within AutoCAD you have two different areas. You've got your model space and you've got your layout space. The layout space is essentially where all of your printing happens. So I'm going to delete the second layout space just by right-clicking and deleting, and I'm only going to work on the one because we're going to start with one single printout. So by right-clicking, you have a little menu here that you can go and make a few changes to. So I'm going to call this one elevation, and then I'm going to be able to make modifications to this drawing. The first thing you want to do to make those changes is right-click and go to your Page Setup Manager. Now that menu is off the screen for you, but you will be able to see it if you do go to Page Setup Manager. Then once you have your elevation there, you can click on Modify, and this is where all of the changes happen. So this is where earlier on when I spoke about those CTB files, we need to basically make sure that that CTB is activated for that page. Under the plotter, I'm going to go and use a Adobe PDF. That's going to allow me to print out a digital file, a digital vector file that we can then pull into Photoshop, or we can also use to print out on our home printers. So next what we want to do is choose whether the drawing is going to be portrait or landscape, and then after that choose plot scale. Generally the plot scale should be 1:1, and you're going to handle the scale of your drawing within AutoCAD itself, not within this page setup. So next we're going to click on preview, and this is where you're going to be able to start previewing your drawing. But before you look at this preview, let's rather go and set up our drawing. So I'm going to click on OK there, and now I can go and start moving these lines across, and this is going to be basically my print area, or the border that is going to be printable. So if I double click on it, I'm going to go into my scene, and I can actually go and manipulate things there. Also notice that once you click on it, you can also type MS, which is model space, and you can click enter, and you will basically go into that model and you can manipulate it. Also, if you just double click inside, you get the same effect happening. So if you double click on the outside, you're in paper space. If you double click on the inside, you're in model space. So note that when you click on the outside and you're in paper space, you can't manipulate it the same way. So there is a definite difference there. So I'm going to first of all zoom in to my elevation. So the first thing we need to do here is we need to flip the drawing around. So the same thing happens where we need to go and give it a 3-point UCS. So we need to rotate our plan around. So once the UCS has been established, just in the way that I've covered in a previous lesson, we type in plan, enter, C, enter for current, and it's going to rotate it according to that current UCS that we've just set up. Then we can zoom in, and remember here that what we need to establish is the correct scale. Now, the one thing I didn't mention earlier, but you need to establish right from the beginning, is choose what size of paper you're going to print on and what scale is appropriate for that piece of paper. It's essential to make those choices as soon as possible because all of your text dimension and line type sizes will depend on how big you're going to be printing it. Even the line thicknesses are going to change between an A4 print and an A0 print. So let's go now and go into our Page Setup Manager, and let's just make sure that we have the right paper size. So I'm going to be using, let's say, an A3, and I'm going to click on OK, and then I'm going to be able to enlarge the printable area of my plan to that A3. Now next what we want to do is set up the actual scale of this drawing. So if we click on that border and then type on our keyboards Control-1, we're going to get the options. And if we go down to round about there, we have standard scale. So here we can go to 1 in 100, and you'll see that 1 in 100 is 0.01. So now if we go to 0.02, you'll see that's 1 in 50. And if we go to 0.005, that's going to be 1 in 200. So this is a way that you can give a custom scale to your drawings, and we can now go in and have a look at what this is going to look like. So I'm going to look at this scale at 1 in 200. I know that the paper is too small, and this should most probably be printed on a much bigger piece of paper. But just for the sake of getting a printout, or at least a preview of what a printout would look like, let's go ahead and test this now. So I'm going to type in Control-P to do a test print, and I'm going to click on Preview. And this is now the area where you can start to move around and you can have a look at how your drawings are starting to look. So already I can see that I don't have any dot dash lines here, so I'm going to hit Escape, and I'm just going to regenerate my drawing by typing in RE and Enter. If you can see that your line types are not there, in other words, you don't have any dashes where there should be dashes, then type PSLT-SCALE, so in other words, paper space line type scale, hit Enter, and this should be 0, and Enter, and then try to regenerate your drawing again. Now once you zoom in, you'll see that you do have those dashes. So that's a little bit of a trick just to get your paper space, your line type scale correct. So now if we do another test print, let's just do Control-P and then Preview again. You'll see that you do have those dashes there. They may be a little bit too small, and I also think that this text is going to be too small, because remember that this text is set up to be 1 in 100, and if we print out at 1 in 200, we're going to need to increase the size of this text. So this is something that we're going to look at in the next lesson, how to adjust and use the settings of your dimensions, your text, as well as your line types. So we're going to go and look at that in the next lesson as we modify this. So just before finishing this, I also want to let you see that all of these lines which are vertical are actually looking quite thick compared to these other lines because they're so closely spaced. So remember, when you put two very thin lines next to each other, they may start to merge on your plotter. So that's actually quite an important thing to realize, that doing a test print, you may get very different results to what you think you're going to have. So definitely I recommend print, and get a good feel for what you're drawing in AutoCAD, because it always looks different once it comes out the other side. So that's going to be it for this lesson. Once you're happy with how your print is looking, you can basically make changes on this side so that your prints always do look accurate. So that is it for this lesson. I'm now going to move into the next lesson, where we're going to look at the changes of dimensions, text sizes, and line types. And then we're going to, in the lessons following that, we're going to have a look at just filling in a few more details to our plan sections and elevations so that we have a more presentable looking drawing.